Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. Everything you see on this show is for sale and in stock, so reach out to me. I am still Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com to buy, trade, or sell. We buy what we sell what we buy. We also take trades, and we're always looking to build inventory. Sell me a watch, sell me an entire collection. We pay cash, we pay fast, we walk you through the process, make it a no-brainer, no upper limit on value paid. So to buy, trade, or sell with us, reach out to tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Today we're jumping in with a big piece. We rarely see watches as exotic as this 2023 release from Patek Philippe. You're looking at the 5924G. This is the Pilot travel time chronograph with flyback capability. We will fire up the chrono right here. It is a monumental watch. What I want to highlight first is just how well loomed this is. We're not used to this kind of loom on a precious metal Patek. Now, it is a Pilot style, though it's not a Calatrava. This is actually part of the Complications collection. It's a beefy watch, 42 millimeters in diameter and 52 from lug to lug. It's got wrist presence. And you can see on the dial, there's a lot going on. We'll get a little bit closer, draw in some of these details. There's a wonderful sort of slate blue metallic sunburst, white gold, applique, Arabic numerals. We have AM, PM for both home and local time. You can see here that the 2 hour hands are superimposed. There are pusher adjusters on the flank to adjust them forward or backwards. We have a pointer style date up at the top, and then at the bottom we have a 60-minute chronograph register, and this is a flyback chronograph, so reset and restart all in one push without first stopping. Turn it all over. Free sprung, 6 position adjusted, accurate to no worse than -3 + 2 seconds a day. Column wheel, vertical clutch, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring, gyromax style, free sprung balance, beautifully decorated. And you can see we have several different sizes of engine turned perlage depending on the surface. Beveling is good, and you can see it's rendered on both steel chronograph components and brass bridges. The screw heads are all black polished. The springs are beautifully satinated on their tops and chamfered on their sides. The watch is substantial, as you can see, aviator style calfskin with a contrasting stitch, cross hatching to match aviator style, historically with a clevis style buckle designed to evoke the kind of hardware you might find on vintage leather aviation jackets of the 20s and the 30s. Now we're going to throw this on my wrist. It's a big watch, and you could see that it's a big watch when I'm wearing it. That said, it's not so big that I couldn't wear it. I would say if your wrist is my size or larger, you're good to go. It's comfortable. It sits fairly flush. It's under 13.5 millimeters thick. It's about 13.3 right here, and you can see it actually matches the color of my cuff quite well. So this is a really cool piece. 2023 launch from Patek Philippe, one of their most useful. Flyback chronograph, a calendar, and travel time, all with substantial loom. We may as well double down. Can you guess this one? It's a personal favorite. If you love the 5226G, then you will love the 5326G. That's right, related to the well-known charcoal fume dial. We have here the same basic design idiom, but with a second time zone and an annual calendar with moon phase. Now this is a fairly large watch at 41 millimeters in diameter. You can see one of the standout features. Take a good look between the case and the lug. I'm going to do my best now to get you a better view of this, but the lugs are actually attached to the case back, so there is no physical connection between the case flank with its knurling and the lug. So you can see just enough room to slide a piece of paper between them, allowing Patek to give you this beautiful pyramid-style hobnail all the way around. We have these sharp, angular lugs, a conical bezel. It's got a real hard character to it. And then we have the textured charcoal fume, as Patek Philippe calls it. So textured charcoal is the color, light at the center, darker at the edge. We've got a sort of ecru off-white coloration for the loom as well as the printing. And then we have a set of lovely syringe-style hands. You can see the second time zone is not loomed, but the nice thing about the second time zone is you can superimpose these hour hands if you have no need for a second time zone in the moment. Now the watch is quite impressive, mechanically a little bit more fun than the 226, because here with the micro rotor, we've got a movement whose base plate is actually 31 millimeters across, so it fills this 41 millimeter case really nicely. You can see individual bridges once we get to the third wheel, fourth wheel, escape wheel, and the balance, free sprung, anti-magnetic hairspring, 22 karat white gold micro rotor. And then we have, actually, I believe this one might be platinum. And then we have ceramic rotor bearings. And all of this makes for a very efficient wind and a 48-hour power reserve. It is adjusted in 6 positions. Chronometer is 5. This is 6. That's quite impressive. Although we don't have sharp interior angles or outward points, you can see that there's a handsome bevel on the edge of the bridges. We do have several sizes of engine turning. That seems to be characteristic of a lot of Patek watches today. You can also see how exceptionally broad the stripes are across this movement. And just to emphasize how broad those stripes are, I'm going to bring back the 5924 for a moment. You can see these are relatively narrow circular stripes. These are incredibly broad and luminous, and they're characteristic of these 31-260 series movements. Just to give you an idea of how broad those stripes are, I'm going to bring in yet another comparable. Here we have a 5098R, a Gondolo, launched in rose gold for 2009. You can see how narrow those stripes are. Now, this is a lovely watch on a lot of levels. It's got a solid gold dial cut with real rose lathe reductive guilloche, evocative of a watch made in the Chronometro Gondolo series for Brazil back in 1925. The core 5098 launched in 2007. This rose gold came 2 years later, and I really like the color contrast that they added to the dial to pop a little bit better. Now, a lot of these elements here are pre-Art Deco, more Art Nouveau, which is why they don't really square with that ocean liner or skyscraper aesthetic of the late 20s into the 30s. This is more of a precursor movement here. The Chronometro Gondolo series, running from the late 19th century, I want to say about 1872 to 1927, initially pocket watches, later wristwatches, and back in the first 25 years of the wristwatch era, maybe even the first 30 or so, it was not clear that round watches would be the default format. And here we have a beautiful movement that is properly sized and shaped for the case. Manual wind, 44-hour power reserve. You can see it has everything you would expect: free sprung, variable inertia balance, a beautiful degree of finishing. We have a handsome solarization on the crown wheel and the ratchet wheel. It's a large watch, though, and I'm going to show you this. It wears broad across the wrist, so while it's not particularly wide, you can see it is particularly long. It's about 50 millimeters from end to end, if you include the lugs, but it is thin. It'll easily slide underneath the cuff, and aside from the gorgeous guilloche dial, one of my favorite features of this watch, we'll get close again, is that it's a monoblock case. So you can see the bezel and the mid case, they're all one piece. Everything loads through the case back on the reverse side, so dial movement, it all goes in through the back, leaving a wonderfully seamless, sleek profile when viewed from the front. A really handsome watch in a singular aesthetic. You never mistake a 5098. That was discontinued around 2016, 2017. Now I'll show you once again the 5326G annual calendar and dual time. Easy to wear. It's a little bit smaller than the Pilot travel time chronograph we just saw, and in my opinion, maybe even a little bit more practical. I like to have a calendar, and I like to have a travel time function. I really like to have it all with a lot of lume, and it's hard not to love this distinctive case, showing you how far Patek case making has come since they bought Atelier Réuni, the case maker out of Geneva, in 1975. Across town in Geneva, we have Vacheron Constantin. Now, this is the first generation overseas, so 37 millimeters in diameter. You can see it features a tritium dial, a lovely brown bronze metallic sunburst, this handsome vaulted Vacheron logo, only 8.5 millimeters thick. It's significantly thinner than later overseas. You can see all the elements were laid out from the beginning when Dino Modolo and Vincent Kaufmann designed the first overseas in 1996. They drew heavily on Jörg Heisig's 1977 Model 222 sports watch, but this is very much its own beast, right down to the very distinctive first-generation bracelet, which is infinitely more intricate than any subsequent overseas bracelet. It's even mirror polished internally. You can see it's got these dual channels running in parallel, integration with the lugs. We have a rolled bevel on the side of the individual links, and then several removable links with an intermediate size in there in case you're in between sizes. We've got that Maltese cross on the clamshell, and by the way, there's just two different buckles here, or I should say two different locks. We've got one that is a sliding lock. It has that Maltese cross on it. That's closed, and that's open. And then we've got the clamshell, so it actually locks twice. First, right there, and then like that. Now, it's really compact. As a 37mm watch, today I think you would almost describe this as appropriate for men or women, as Vacheron watches designed for women are comparable in size to this today. On the reverse side, the image of the Italian naval training vessel Amerigo Vespucci, that is the likeness used for that ship, and inside a Girard-Perregaux-based Vacheron caliber 1310. Interesting in that it's the only chronometer certified overseas, and this is a rare chronometer certified application of that 3000 series Girard-Perregaux automatic, which has another feature that would become scarce on later overseas, hacking seconds. Really flat, really flush. You can see this is not pushing the limits of my wrist size. Very comfortable with plenty of room to size down on a smaller wrist. And again, this being a tritium dial, it is authentic patina and still quite rich with the gold applique, the date window, the logo, the hour indices, super flat and flush. I think the first overseas automatic was the best overseas automatic. Now, jumping over to Lange, we crossed the border into Germany. This watch was sold in 2001, and it's got a very 90s sensibility about its size and proportions. Langematik in white gold, 37 millimeters in diameter, only about 8.6, 8.7 millimeters thick. You can see it's really compact and super short lug to lug. The dial, as ever, on Langes that do not include some sort of engine turning, rose gold dial, or enamel. This is actually sterling silver, galvanized black, with the hands as well as the indices and numeral 12 made of white gold. Now, perhaps surprisingly here, because it is a dress watch, there is actually some lume and a decent amount. You can approximate the time with the quarters and the two hands visible. We also have an element. You see Saxomat is the caliber in there, caliber L921, and it features a 0 reset stop seconds function. So you can see how the seconds hand resets perfectly to the index at 60. That makes it quite easy to set this watch against a reference time when you are synchronizing it to a clock. Taking a look on the reverse side, we have the Saxomat caliber here. So basically a 3/4 style rotor, but with the advantages of a micro rotor, namely that the rotor's not blocking your view of the case back, and that it keeps the watch as thin as a manual wind. Of course, we have elements that you don't find anywhere else. Look at this. The rotor itself has several different levels of hand finishing on it, and it's 21 karat gold. It's connected to a mass that's platinum by blued screws, so that is exceptional. You just do not see that, where the rotor is precious metal, and then the mass is also precious metal of an even denser character. A very efficient winder, 46 hours of power reserve, 3 Hz beat rate, 5 position adjustment. You can see that we've got black polish on the steel swan's neck, on the case clamp screws, on the cover for the escape wheel, as well as the ratchet wheel atop the barrel. We have a wonderful snailing across the bridge underneath the rotor, which has a black polished center. There's also snailing on the platinum mass, and then we have a combination of fire blued screws, which gives it a lovely amount of color, as we've got gold, violet, silver, and blue. The bridges and plates made of German silver, a historic element used in the pocket watch era of East German watchmaking in Glashütte. It's copper, it's nickel, it's zinc, and the copper gives it that golden hue compared to silvery rhodium-plated Swiss brass. There's engine turning in 2 different sizes on the movement, at least 2, freehand engraving on the balance cock, and then we have lovely stripes across the bridges, and you can see quite well we have beveling or anglage on the edge of the bridges, and if you look carefully, you can see the cap for the escape wheel has a sharp inward angle, and that's rendered on steel. Very difficult to execute that sharp crease where 2 angles meet in an acute angle. All right, let's throw it on the wrist, get a sense of how it wears. Very easily. You could wear this watch on a man's wrist, a lady's wrist. A young person could wear this. I wouldn't necessarily give it to a kid, certainly not child's play, but it's got that size to it. You can see how easily it slides under a cuff, being a black dial with a white metal case. It can also dress down a little bit. You can wear this in a t-shirt and shorts, wear it casually. You can see how, especially down the barrel, the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, making this an outstanding choice, even if your wrist is under 14 centimeters in circumference. Oh, Vacheron makes nice things. Now, the original version of this watch came out in 2017, but in white gold, as you see it here, the Traditionnelle Quantième Complète, or Complete Calendar, vowed in 2021. A lovely dark rhodium-plated dial. It's dark rhodium or ruthenium, and you get that lovely slate-style aesthetic muted metal with a white gold case, 41 millimeters in diameter. You can see it's got a little bit of a fluting to its underside that extends into the lugs and a coining to the case back. There's a step to the case flank and the bezel. The dial featuring half-frosted Dauphine hands. People ask, what's the difference between the Patrimony and Traditionnelle, especially since we used to have a model line called Patrimony Traditionnelle prior to 2015. Well, Traditionnelle has Dauphine-style hands, whereas Patrimony has baton. White gold, faceted applique hour indices. We have, likewise, white gold logo, triple calendar with a lunette-style radial date and a day and a month with a moon phase. It's a nicely balanced dial. Flip it all over. We've got a manufacture movement with Geneva hallmark finish, 40 hours of automatic winding power reserve, and one feature that you rarely see on high horology movements for some reason. Can't really tell you why hacking seconds feels like a luxury on watches that are by definition high luxury, but yeah, still not all that common and much appreciated here. Now you can see the rotor is beautifully decorated, at least 4 different finishings applied. Geneva hallmark on the movement, the bridge stripes are particularly well done, so are the bevels. There is solarization on the barrel, you can just barely see it peeking out underneath, and has a modern beat rate of 4 Hz or 28,800 vibrations per hour with a 5-position adjustment. This is a lovely and practical everyday dress watch. It's probably too big for a lady, as broad as it is, but it is quite flat and flush, so it slides under a sleeve and it looks sleek on a properly sized wrist. I could wear this on my wrist. I recommend your wrist be my size or larger if you're going to wear this. 41 is getting up there in terms of size for a dress watch, so this has a lot of wrist presence, even if it isn't absolutely bulky or thick. It definitely declares itself with its large wingspan, so 16 centimeter circumference wrists and larger for this watch. Okay, I went back and forth over which would be the final watch. This is the penultimate watch in today's show. Launched in 2016 by Lange and Sohne, this is the Richard Lange jumping seconds, and it is deceptively complex. 39.9 millimeters in platinum. It's part of a 100-piece series. The dial, with a Johann Seifert triple overlap scale, is made of sterling silver. The hands are made of white gold. You can see it is part of the Richard Lange collection because it uses Roman numerals. It is also a regulator with our hours, our minutes, and our seconds. And then we've got deadbeat seconds, and you can see those deadbeat seconds really line up perfectly with the indices on the dial. Pull the crown, you see the first of 4 complications, 0 reset seconds. Now we will fire it back up. We also have a power reserve indicator at center, and the way that power reserve indicator works is that when the watch gets down to its last 10 hours of power reserve, that little indicator turns red. So if you continue to wind it, eventually you can see it will turn silver and go away. The watch has a 42-hour power reserve manually wound. Now I promised you a couple of complications, and it continues on the reverse side. We have a remontoire system, and this is a little bit different than the system that's used on the Zeitwerk. That one energizes the remontoire spring once a minute. This energizes it once a second, like an F. Pigeon remontoire. And as a result, if you listen to the watch, it's got 2 heartbeats. One at 6 beats per second, and then the 1 hertz or 1 beat per second. You can see that the mechanism is considerably more compact than that on the Zeitwerk, and that's of necessity, because this is a much smaller watch and a much thinner watch. Though the movement is nicely sized at 33.6 millimeters, it fits this case really well. Now we've got beveling, we've got stripes, we've got black polish, we have freehand engraving, we have engine-turned perlage, we have golden chaton cups, which I haven't really talked about. But at Lange, they like to reference the pocket watch era because Lange is a revived brand. It was recreated in 1990, so to link it as strongly as possible with a discontinuous history, they like to design their movements as though they were crafted for pocket watches in the 19th century. That's why we have this large 3/4 plate mono bridge. It's why we're using German silver instead of rhodium-plated brass. It's why, for example, we have these golden chaton cups holding the jewels rather than having the jewels pressed directly into the bridge. It's because historically, it wasn't easy to precisely press a jewel into a bridge or a plate, so a precision golden chaton cup would be made, the jewel would be inserted, and then it would be fixed into the larger assembly, the bridge or the plate, using screws. And here we have all these fired blued screws of different sizes, and a kiln is what creates that blue color. You can also see the freehand engraving here, because it's not done with an engine or a laser or a drill bit or a lathe. No two of these are exactly the same. You can see that the swan's neck is both beveled on its side with very tiny bevels and black polished on its top. There's a lovely snailing on the little bridge that sits below the balance. That's a bridge for the escape, and you can see both the anchor and the wheel have been mirror polished. This is a really special watch, and again, you've got a lot going on. Deadbeat seconds, zero reset, power reserve indicator, and the remontoir constant force. So for 42 hours, this thing will run with constant amplitude, meaning it is an extraordinarily accurate timekeeper, having both a free-sprung 5-position adjusted balance and the remontoir system. So it's regular from position to position, but also from hour to hour. And if you look carefully, you can actually see that there's also an overcoil hairspring, which is a rare feature on Lange watches, found on only the best timekeepers. Other details, you can see the bridge for this extraordinarily complex remontoir and stop second system. It's got this super sharp interior angle where two bevels meet, and that is the real deal. That is really sharp inward creasing. You can also see there's an outward point right next to it where two exterior bevels come to a point. So impressive stuff on every level, and being under 40 millimeters, just fractionally under 40 millimeters, it wears really nicely on my wrist. Super comfortable, flat. This is a thin watch, and it's not broad across the wrist either. This watch has everything to recommend it, from quality to rarity, hailing from a great house that's considered to be sort of the German Patek Philippe. And remember, Patek's about 60,000 watches a year. Lange is about 6,000. So that's giving you an idea of the relative orders of magnitude. A very special watch. But not, in my opinion, the most special watch you'll see today. That would be this. In 2023, Moser & C launched the Endeavour Perpetual Tantalum, and while there was a general production variant with a fumé fade abyss blue dial, only 10 examples were made with a lapis lazuli dial, and this is one of them. So we have a lapis lazuli dial, we have a tantalum case in 42 millimeters, that mystifying and hypnotic blue-gray metal. It's as weighty as gold in the hand, but it's got a completely different aesthetic. You wonder, how can it be that uncoated, unplated, un-PVD-treated metal can be blue? Well, this does it. And you can see how fluid the case is, machined and then hand-finished. According to Edouard Mélin, the CEO, they went through one full tool set for each case made. You can see that the bezel is concave all the way around, but it thins out at the mid-case and then extends and grows broader and yawns at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. We have hollows in the case that have been mirror finished and then vertical satination on the side. The reverse of the case is dramatically cambered and cupped. And then on the wrist, because it does have that dramatic curvature, though it's a large dress watch at 42, it's also a very versatile watch, and I have no trouble wearing it whatsoever, and I'm pulling it really, really tight, getting a look down the barrel there and over the top. This is my dream Moser. This is it right there. Not only beautiful, rare, and impressive in every regard, but it's got Andreas Streller's famous Perpetual calendar system, which is adjustable in both directions. And let me show you how this works. So you've got three hands at center. You've got your minutes, your hours, and then you've got the little stub indicator. Now, 12 hours correspond to 12 months, and you can move the system in both directions, and you can move it at any time of day without damaging it. So it's brilliant on both levels. So you can see here, I'm going from September, because we're looking at the 9th month, September 29th to October 4th, just like that. Ultra elegant. There's a double pull system. So the first time you pull, You don't pull all the way out to the setting position. It stops you in the calendar setting position. This way you don't accidentally reset the hand or hack the seconds. You don't reset the minutes, the hours, or hack the seconds. The second pull allows you to withdraw the crown and now hack the seconds and set it to a reference time. You can see that otherworldly sparkle of the mineral deposits in the lapis. There's a power reserve indicator at the side. 7 days is the chronometric power reserve, though if you let it run to exhaustion, this twin barrel movement will run for almost 9 days. Now on the reverse, you could see that the movement is beautiful and nicely fills the case back. Streller reasoned, and justifiably, that you don't need to see the leap year all the time, so he hit it on the case back. 2 barrels, and then we've got the barrel arbors as well as the pivot jewels in those golden chatons. Again, we are at a revival brand. Moser was revived in the modern era for 2005. So like Lange, they are referencing the pocket watch era of Moser, most notably the 19th century when it was at a high. And then we could see, in addition to that, we sort of had the image of a 3/4 bridge, but it's split down the center for easy servicing, which is a good thing. We have double-crested Côte de Genève, distinctive of this brand. The entire escapement, the assortment with the balance and the hairspring, it lifts out as a unit, so a pre-serviced example can be placed in to return the watch more rapidly to you when it returns from a regional service center, and Moser does have global regional service centers. The escapement made in-house along with the balance and the hairsprings. Solid gold escapement for low friction. You can see we have a free-sprung balance with a full bridge for toughness, and then we have 2 horizontally opposed flat hairsprings. They're geometrically identical, but 180 degrees apart. As a result, when one, due to gravity, is caused to run slow, the other, due to gravity, is caused by an equal and opposite margin to run fast. So in any position, it cancels out the effect of gravity, doing what a tourbillon does slowly, only instantaneously, and specifically in a wristwatch format, accomplishing what most wristwatch tourbillon regulators cannot. And this is unique to this lapis dial and a 10-piece jade made as well. A real brilliant cut diamond as the capstone on the balance. Beautifully made, beautifully finished, and wonderfully rare. This is my favorite watch in the show and my favorite Moser of all time. If you feel as I do, reach out to me. I am Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.